good afternoon, Carl.
Greetings, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm fantastic. It's snowing outside, which is really good news.
It's snowing. So you are in Utah. It is snowing in Utah.
Yeah, we have not had hardly any, it's silly. You can almost still ride your mountain bike, but we've got a real storm going on outside, which makes us happy.
Really wow. Happy. Yeah. See, I'm from the DC area. When snow starts falling from the sky, literally snowflakes, individual quantity, like snowflakes begin to fall from the sky, everyone freaks out, everyone shuts down. Like we don't handle snow very well here. We only get a couple times a year. Schools just close the minute snowflakes begin to fall from the sky. So the idea of being excited about the snow, wonderful for different parts of the country.
Yeah, for sure. Very, very good.
So I think that's actually a good highlight for the discussion today. We live in this new increasingly flexible, somewhat mobile world, right? More and more advisors that have kind of found I can work from anywhere. Like I can go different places and manage my practice. My clients are all over the place, or just I spend a lot of money on rent and I've done meetings virtually for the past 2 years. So do I even really need the office anymore? Should we just live this location independent, flexible practice? And a lot of advisors I still hear from the other end are making the case no, at the end of the day, clients can go to anything for the internet. Like my clients come to me because I'm here and they can sit across from me and we can break bread and have difficult conversations in person. And so, we had a question come in for the podcast recently that I've heard in a lot of forms over the past couple of months that I guess oversimplified just comes down to virtual or office. What do clients actually want at this point? What should we be doing or trying to do? How should we be planning if we want to be successful, relevant advisors in the future?
Yeah. Wow. Super good question. Before I give my take, which I, by the way, reserve the right to be wrong about everything I'm going to say about this subject. I want to hear because surely you've done some Kitces research on this.
We have not studied this as directly as as I would like to. We may dig into this a little bit more with some survey work in the coming year. I mean, honestly, the short answer to me is just, there's a bajillion people on the planet. The reality at the end of the day, for every person who thinks virtual is awesome, I love this, internet-based world where I can go wherever I want and do whatever I want. There's someone that says I want me to sit across from a person. I want to be able to shake their hand. I want to be able to look them in the eye. Computer eye doesn't count. We're sitting across from each other, or it's not a real relationship. And just people are going to have different preferences either way. To me, the real driver, I actually turn this around the other direction to say, just what do you want to build? What's meaningful for you? The truth at the end of the day is that most of us end out working with clients that are basically us plus or minus about 10 years, usually of similar kind of background and socioeconomic status, a lot of similar communication style preferences. Because if we didn't line up with people that have a lot of similarity to us and resonate with our communication style, we just wouldn't work with them. We would say it didn't click and we would part ways, right? I always think of that, and I guess to me, the logical extreme of a lot of us, I just have to say engineer clients. And a lot of us just roll our eyes. We all know what that means, except a subset of advisors who are I love engineer clients. I used to be an engineer. I talk to engineers. Engineer clients are great. They're my people. I'm that's the point, right? For every advisor who loves engineers, there's a bunch who don't like them. For every advisor who likes to be virtual, there's a bunch who are going to want to be in person. Clients kind of sort themselves through to us as well. And so I do think there's a very real dynamic in the near term of, if I got a lot of clients that are really more in-person inclined, be wary how much I go virtual. If I got a bunch of clients who want to go virtual, it's probably not helpful to try to force them in the office. They don't want to come. So your clientele may evolve a bit if you are not necessarily lined up that way and need to reconfigure. But to me, at the end of the day, look, there's plenty of human beings on the planet who are going to pick virtual, and there's plenty of human beings who are going to pick in-person office. Just do the thing you want to do and get the clients who like that and accept that. May take you a couple months or years to get there if you're not aligned now, but like set the vision of what you want, just go do it. Like it would be different if we were going to say like, I want to make a virtual practice, but it's 1972 and we can only do this with like pen pal letters. Like that might be a little bit harder, but the technology's come a long way. So like if you want to do it virtual, the tech's there to do it. If you want to do it in person, there's certainly no shortage of people who want that. So like I guess ironically, given how client centric I generally am for everything we do in the advisor world, I'm sort of the mindset, like, I guess not forget the clients, but like do what you want to do and find the clients who want that. I don't think you're going to run out. Like on this choice, you're not going to run out. So just do the thing you want to do.
Yeah. So first of all, like generally, I love that because I remember thinking that 20 years ago. I remember
they were too early back then. You're
not remote, but like I remember thinking I'm going to build a business that I want to build, and then I'm just going to attract the people. And I remember feeling so like how often people would come around doing that sales training where you have to do the thing and pick which one, your communication style based on like you had to be I'm moving my hands around a lot right now for those of you who aren't watching, but like you had to be like a chameleon. Remember that all that training? Like if you,
if your clients are very visually oriented, like you need to draw a lot of pictures for them. But if they're auditory, you need to change your communication style. And if they really prefer written over verbal, like you have to stop calling them and send them emails unless they really prefer verbal, and you have to stop sending them emails and call them instead. Like we're always supposed to adapt to whatever their style is.
Yeah, I just remember trying that and thinking I'm just too dumb for this. Like, what if I just did what I uniquely wanted to do and I did it louder and stronger, so it was attractive to the people who liked it. So I think virtual versus in person is another vein of that. And I think like I can think of how cool of a business is it to have one of the old brick buildings on Main Street that people come into and they get to meet your staff and there's somebody there and it's like cozy and awesome. And you build the office like a comfortable architect's office or a coffee shop or whatever. Like how cool is that? That's like really, really cool if that's what you want. And then how amazing is it that we've got people building like world-class businesses, highly specialized niches that are serving people all over the world 100% remote that they've never even met. So I think I love the idea that like there is no right answer except the one that's right for you. But one thing that I think I'm increasingly finding true is whether as you were talking, I was just thinking through like how little I like things in my calendar. And so the thing I want to just throw into this discussion is asynchronous work. Like we've as a team internally, and then every other place I'm involved in, like community service and a church, and I'm continually thinking, let's only have meetings for things that you can only solve with a meeting. You know, and then I've realized that boundary is a lot more fluid than I thought. So the ability to send somebody like instead of, and I've noticed this with a lot of advisors, the answer almost always is, hey, I have a question. The answer almost is, let's have a meeting. Hey, I'll send over some Zoom links and calendar. Well, how much of it can we get done by saying, hey, give me a little background on if it's easier for you, Mr. or Mrs. Client, shoot me some details feel free to just record a voice memo or a video if you want, a screen share, send it over to me. And then I'll see if I can answer your question. So that we don't, because I think clients, everybody I know right now, like busy. And the last thing they want is another meeting. And so I think that's another interesting twist to think you can do that easier if you've built a remote culture that allows you to respond asynchronously and rapidly with clients And so I think that's a really powerful thing to start thinking about. I'm seeing it come up a lot and I always think this is interesting, like in the kind of strategy and management world, and I spend some time there because I've got a bunch of buddies that are way into that. Strategy and management, both on the entrepreneurship level and even on large companies, like places where you get OKRs, like all of that kind of stuff. I'm seeing the word asynchronously popping up all over the place right now. Like, hey, do we really need a meeting for that? And that's the first thing I thought of when we started thinking about remote. Because think of what you're asking a client to do. Like, okay, I'm going to get in the car. I'm going to drive a half an hour if I'm lucky. I'm going to find a place to park. I'm going to come in. It's winter. And I'm going to drive home. And that could possibly be me recording a 5-minute screen share, you recording a 15-minute screen share back with the answer. Like, fascinating. So I don't know how that fits into this discussion, but and then the last thing I'd want to say on this is we clearly know that there's a level of communication that goes on in person that doesn't happen remotely. One step down, there's a level of communication that goes on with video that doesn't happen over the phone. Mm-hmm. And one step down, there's a level of communication on the phone that doesn't happen asynchronously via email. Yep. And so I think there is always still, that's important to keep that in mind. And I think we're getting better at capturing that nonverbal communication and the level of connection via video. Now, I think it's important to realize, like, you can be really good at this. Like, this is me looking uncomfortably in the camera. It's uncomfortable for me because Michael's down here, like physically down here. This is
not
me
physically on the screen.
Digitally. Physically
we are in
office.
different
You're
locations. Right. We're not like doing this on cameras when we're actually in the same room opposite each other.
This is me looking directly at Michael. Right? That's a different feeling than that.
Yeah.
And I think if we're going to do this remote thing, we should keep in mind every little thing we can do to increase the level of connection, occasionally at least. And geez, it's not that much. Like, this is my iPhone camera plugged into the computer, looking direct. This is a $25 lav mic. You know what I mean? It's not that hard to be a little bit better than your webcam and your web speakers.
But Carl, I mean, isn't the essence of good service from advisors like the in-person meeting?
Yeah, it's look, I think the essence of, well, geez, that's a complicated question, right? The essence of good service from advisors, not prospective clients, but you're actually, once you're a client, is rapid response to problems. Right? To me, it's like
rapid response to problems. So does that
give me an answer?
Does that break down in an asynchronous world? I mean, is asynchronous send it to me when you want, and I'll get back to you when I can?
No, well, I should be clear. If I communicated that way, I don't mean it that way. I mean, it may even be faster, right? Like, we don't, like, I cannot even fathom, like, about a year ago, I had enough with calendar Tetris. Like, the when it was 26 emails to find a time that we could meet together with my friend Rob, who runs a big firm in the UK, I was like, 26 emails. Like, it's a full-time job for me just to schedule an appointment with you. So, and I was like, is there any way you could just send me a video talking through what we were going to talk about? And we got it all done asynchronously. So sometimes it's easier. Now, the connection.
And what do you use to do that?
Depending on I love using video, and I use a service Vidyard, but okay. Loom is probably what I would use if I was starting. I just got an early contract with Vidyard. Okay. Loom, and I love the mix of screen share. Like, here's what I love doing. So simple, right? Loom, screen record with the little camera of you, so that's like you're little down here in the corner, and then you've got the email right in front of you that the client sent asking these questions. I pull up their email and literally highlight the question I'm talking about, why I'm answering it. right? And so they literally, like, they're looking at their own email, I'm highlighting it, and I'm down in the corner talking, and maybe I have something else that I want to share, maybe a visual.
Okay.
So that's how we get a ton of our work done. Now, there is certain stuff that I think if it's going to go, I don't know what it would be, maybe 2 or 3 layers deep. Like if it was a decision tree that had more than 2 layers, then maybe it needs to be done synchronously, like on the computer together, in a meeting together, whether that's in person or not. But I do think we've been given permission to try more of these things. And we knew people, you and I knew people that were building fully remote businesses before. Now it's even easier.
Do you think about this differently as the client relationship evolves? Because like I think about this in the typical, typical client scenario, at least for me historically. So, tons of work up front, lots of meetings, lots of stuff, often in person, at least historically, had to be virtual for the past 18 months. Then we get into we're through the initial planning process. We're into some ongoing cadence, review meeting cadence, check-in cadence, often still regular meetings, often at least historically still in person, right? We'll come together, we'll break bread, we'll spend a little time. Hopefully we'll have some planning conversations. At worst, we'll look at a portfolio performance statement if we get stuck. Like we have those meetings on an ongoing basis. And, you always get to some point. I mean, historically to me, it was somewhere around the 4 or 5 year mark with the client relationship.
Right.
Where like you get to that point, hey, it's time for our meeting. Like I haven't seen you in a couple of months. Like let's do our regular meeting. And I get some response from the client that was basically, I'm good right now. Just there's not much going on. I don't really have anything I wanted to bring you to talk about. So like, I'll call you if there's any planning stuff going on. You call me if you think there's planning stuff we should be talking about. And short of that, like, I don't really feel like we need to have this check-in meeting. And the meetings suddenly get less frequent. They begin to fall off in cadence. If they weren't virtual, they start going virtual, right? Like they used to be in person, they become phone check-ins. Now maybe they become video check-ins. And so I do find very much there's this evolution where after the first few years of the relationship, I think really it's just some combination of we finally work together long enough, you really, really trust me. And like you're letting go and have really delegated that trust. And just the bulk of your planning stuff has largely been sorted out. So until something changes in life, there's not necessarily as much planning stuff to do where that changes. So like when I think about this, I get it for more virtual, more asynchronous as that client relationship matures. But I guess I'm still wondering, like, how do you think about this early on? Like just this asynchronous dynamic you're talking about, does this work in the first year or 2 of the client relationship, or is this more about how we service clients in years 5 through 25?
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think one thing, just real quickly to comment on that, I think one thing to keep in mind is I think it's really smart to set the foundation early that when that happens, when the clients start feeling like, hey, I'm good, they recognize that as a win.
Yep.
Right? Because if you think, like, I want to be really clear about this, I think you are more valuable, not less. And that feels backwards to us, like, oh, we're doing less work. No, getting to the point where you can do less work is really, really hard work and really valuable. It's sort of like advisors deserve to get paid for doing nothing when nothing's the right thing to do. And it's really important from a regulatory perspective. Being able to tell somebody to do nothing is a lot of work, right? So I think setting that up early, and it's a simple conversation like, hey, you're in our financial detox period, right? Like 24 months, 36 months, 48 months from now, you may find that we don't need to talk as much. And when we do, like high five, right? So anyway, that I think is important. Early on, I would just emphasize this idea that remember that first meeting, like there's a tendency when you start thinking asynchronously, email, there's a tendency, it can quickly devolve into just sort of these really quick transactional kind of conversations. And I think at least early on, we got to remember our job, at least in my mind. Real financial advice is sort of around this idea of aligning people's use of capital with what they say is important to them. That's generally it's generally a deep conversation, a conversation that typically goes better in person. And I would say it's probably easier in person. And the second easiest is via video. And so I just wouldn't forget, if you're going to do video and be remote, get good at it, right? Like get good at trying to create that environment where you can have those sorts of conversations up front. But once you get through that idea, at least in my mind, and again, I reserve the right to be wrong, but once you get through the idea, once you get through the part, like we've really uncovered a sense of why, a statement of financial purpose, that kind of work, that you're doing, whatever level you're doing it to, right? All the way from maybe George Kinder spectrum up to whatever, Dan Sullivan 3 years from now questions. Once you uncover that, then there's a lot of jobs to be done. And once there's jobs to be done, it feels like at least be thinking jobs to be done could be handled. What's the smoothest, quickest way to get this done for the client? If it needs a conversation, and it may for maybe, right? Like, oh, we need to tackle life insurance. Oh, gosh, that's a conversation, right? How do you feel about this? And we're going to kill somebody today. Like, it's really important that we, you know what I mean? Like, which spouse is going to die first? We're going to have all those conversations. I don't need to be crass about that, but that's literally what we do.
Right.
But then when it's time to get the insurance, that's a job to be done. So I just wonder if you can sort of think through, like, jobs to be done. Do I really need to call and say, hey, we need an hour meeting? Like,
but
when we do be about?
When we do need the hour meeting, like, are you virtual? Are you in office? Like, just what do clients want? When you get down to client level.
I think I don't think clients know that, especially, like, I'm just thinking, I don't know about people much older than me, but everybody I hang out with, I don't think there's a sense of, like, I need to go to that person's office to see that they physically exist. Like, I remember feeling that way 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, sort of like, I'm used to a bank, like it's a building and it's got bricks and I can go there and my money's there in a drawer somewhere, like I need to see it. I don't get that
Jed
sense.
Clampett style. You just want to go to the bank and see your money every now and then.
Yeah. I don't get the sense that happens anymore. So I don't know that clients know, like, hey, this first meeting is, it's hard to have that discussion if the dryer just beeped because it's finished, or the kids come running in the room, or whatever else. So if you can do that virtually, which you just have to get good at communicating. Hey, for this first meeting, let's set aside a little bit of time. We want to make sure we have the right conversation. And this is really important that you can do that virtually. We know people who do it. So I don't know that clients, again, it's sort of a funny question to me. What do clients want? Because often clients don't know. I think this is true of real financial planning, period. Like, they don't even know that they want it until they experience it.
I feel like they have a preference. Just people have a preference, but they sort it out. I mean, look, like, if the client is someone who really has a strong preference for in-person meetings, like, you're never going to have the conversation with them as a virtual advisor about whether this is going to work. They're not going to call you. Like, they're going to someone up the street who has the physical office that they've been driving by, and they see it, and they like it, and they trust it. It's convenient to their house or work. And so they go there. Like, they just go. And I think, as you're highlighting well from the other end, right? If it's someone who just looks at a meeting in an advisor's office, like, oh, the time, the traffic, the schlep, like, can't we just do a quick phone call and figure this out, or an email or a video chat or an asynchronous chat? Like, why do I even need to spend my time? Like, if that's the client's mindset, like, well, if that's how you work, guess what? They're probably finding their way to you, or at least you can begin to market to actually communicate that as a positive. So again, at least from my end, just humans are wonderfully varied people, and we don't have to serve all of them or most of them or more than like 0.0000001% of the world population. So like this, to me, this is just a domain. Pick the thing that you want to do and find the clients, or the clients will find their way to you that are comfortable with that work style, right? I think it's even a version of the communication thing. Like you can try to chameleon your communication style to be more verbal for the verbal people, more written for the written people, or you can just write long emails because you like writing long emails, and people who like long emails will work with you, and people who like phone calls will ditch you. And you'll just end out with a bunch of clients who like communicating exactly the way you like communicating. It's okay.
Yep.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Although I will say, I think the biggest takeaway for me was actually just the comment you made along the way that I love so much. Like I jotted down as you said it, like sometimes advisors deserve to get paid for nothing when nothing is the right thing to do, and getting someone to do nothing can be really hard work. So I love that. It is totally not germane to the actual discussion of virtual or office, but I just felt the need to give a shout out for that. I like that.
Oh, thank you. That'll end up on Twitter.
Yeah, probably. Well, if not, we'll share out that you said it and make sure everybody knows.
Yeah, but one thing I do think would be fun, and I just want to emphasize as we wrap up, is I love this idea of like, it's Lao Tzu actually. Lao Tzu said, and I don't have the quote, darn, I'm going to butcher the quote a little bit.
This got deep real quick. What's the quote?
Really,
man?
I know, Lao Tzu, it's really great. It's be who you really are and go all the way. It's very close to that. And I like this idea of, which I think is part of this conversation, like be more of who you are. Like be more of that, be more opinionated, be louder with that, be clearer about that, because that becomes just like the niche and the specialization and how you meet. And I mean, I've got an advisor friend who only does his client meetings outside. Be more of who you are and go all the way, I think is really, really cool. And I think it fits with this movement. I think it fits with this meeting thing. Like and I think that's really, really awesome advice. And it's fun to celebrate that, because for so long we felt everybody in this industry feels like they have to fit into a certain mold. And it's really cool to start seeing, and virtual and remote is just one example of this idea of like, no, I don't have to do it that way. I don't have to do it that way. So I love that. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Carl.